It's midday. Good afternoon. I am Olabisi Olaniyi Oluwasegun with Global News. In the news, Somalia launches television channel to counter Al-Shabaab's propaganda. United Nations meets Morocco over Western Sahara region's dispute. Malaysian opposition leader named Prime Minister.
This is the news.
Now the news in detail. 7 legal luminaries have faulted the removal of Bega Oluwasegun as the Speaker of Ekiti State House of Assembly and his replacement by Adaba. In a joint statement on Wednesday, the 7 senior advocates of Nigeria said Oluwasegun was unlawfully removed, adding that what they called the democratic rascality must stop at the Assembly. The statement was signed by Are Afebabalola, Chief Olaniyi, and 5 other senior advocates of Nigeria. Wole Adesina, Oludaramola, Femi Falana, Dayo Akinoja, and Bega Iwoli. Oluwasegun from Ikole Constituency 1 was elected last week with 15 votes to defeat his challenger, Bumi Adaba, from Imure constituency, who scored 10 votes during the election conducted by the clerk of the House to replace the late Speaker from Olaniyi Afuye. However, in a twist of events, some lawmakers regrouped on Monday at the plenary and elected Adaba as the new Speaker following the reported impeachment of Oluwasegun for allegedly sabotaging the passage of the 2022 Appropriation Bill, among other allegations. The statement expresses regret over the alleged violations of the principle of fair hearing in the entire process by the political gladiators in the All Progressives Congress. It explains that Oluwasegun, who was elected by the majority of lawmakers last week, ought to have been given enough time to respond to allegations against him before its removal. It adds that the impeachment will be challenged in court in the interest of peace and the rule of law. The statement also calls on the State Council of Traditional Rulers and other stakeholders in the state to intervene towards finding a lasting solution to the impasse. It further states that leading lawyers from Ekiti State in the country will, in a matter of days, release a joint statement on the issue. The Nigeria Governors Forum says its lawyers have taken steps to prevent the federal government from selling 10 national integrated power projects. This is contained in a communique issued on Wednesday at the end of the teleconference held on Tuesday by the governors. It was signed by NGF Chairman and Sokoto State Governor Aminu Tambuwa. The governors also insisted that the dispute over the planned payment of $418 million Paris Club refund fee by the federal government to some consultants be left for the court to resolve. Meanwhile, the NIPPS in contention were not listed by the governors. However, in April 2021, the National Council on Privatization approved the adoption of a fast-track strategy for the privatization of 5 power plants. They are Gerego, Omotosho, Ihonbo, Oluwasegun, and Calabar power plants. Away from Nigeria, Somalia has launched a new TV channel named Dalja to counter Al-Shabaab's propaganda. This is as the government intensifies its media campaign against the Al-Qaeda allied militant group. The state media reported that President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed inaugurated the SNTV Dalja, Somali National TV Dalja channel, which it said will focus on anti-Khawarij operations. Days earlier, the government said it had shut down over 500 social media accounts spreading Al-Shabaab's ideologies. Al-Shabaab has a sophisticated media machinery that includes several affiliated media outlets and dozens of accounts across social media platforms. South Africa's prison service says it will challenge a court decision that sends former President Jacob Zuma back to jail. The Department of Correctional Services said, having carefully studied the judgment, it is convinced that another court may arrive at a different conclusion. On Monday, the Supreme Court of Appeal had ordered Mr. Zuma to return to prison after upholding an earlier ruling that his medical parole had been unlawful. The 80-year-old was given a 15-month sentence last year for contempt of court over his refusal to testify during an investigation into corruption. However, he was released after 2 months in jail after his lawyers argued that he had an undisclosed terminal illness and needed medical care that could not be provided in prison. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has held a meeting with Morocco's King Mohammed VI on where they discuss the disputed Western Sahara region. Western Sahara, a former Spanish colony, is considered a non-self-governing territory by the United Nations. Morocco controls 80% of the territory and the rest is held by the Polisario movement, which fought with Morocco for years after Spanish forces withdrew in 1975. In October, the UN Security Council called on both sides to resume negotiations. The two leaders met on Wednesday on the sidelines of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations held in the Moroccan city of Fez. A missile exploded in the center of Azaz on Tuesday. The explosion killed 5 civilians in the Syrian opposition city in northern Aleppo province. As at the time of this report, who fired the missiles was unknown, but the Syrian Civil Defense, known as the White Helmets, said that the missiles had been fired from areas controlled by the Syrian government and the YPG-led Syrian Democratic Forces. Tuesday's attack came after days of Turkish air attacks against the predominantly Kurdish YPG or People's Protection Units, as well as YPG rocket attacks on Turkey and the opposition-controlled areas of Syria. Civilians on both sides have died in the attacks. Turkey considers the YPG to be the Syrian branch of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, a designated terrorist group in Turkey, the United States, and the European Union. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has named Lieutenant General Asim Munir as the new army chief. Information Minister Mariam Aurangzeb announced the appointment on Twitter today. The appointment ended weeks of speculation over what some people called the most powerful position in the country. Lieutenant General Sahil Samshad will take charge as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee. The current Army Chief, General Qamar Jaid Bajwa, will end the 6-year tenure on November 29. Prime Minister Sharif held a cabinet meeting earlier today where he selected Munir from a list of 6 nominees for the top military post. Anwar Ibrahim has been named Malaysia's new Prime Minister, marking an incredible comeback for a man who was first lined up for the job in the boom years of the 1990s before he was suddenly sacked and jailed. Anwar's Pakatan Harapan coalition won the most seats in the weekend's election, but no one party or coalition emerged with the 112-seat parliamentary majority necessary to form a government. PH and the rival conservative Malay Muslim Perikatan Nasional coalition under former Prime Minister Nurdin Yassin had the second highest number of seats. Both began negotiations to form a government, ruling smaller coalitions in the Borneo states of Sabah and Sarawak, as well as Barisan Nasional, the alliance that dominated Malaysia for some 60 years before its historic defeat in the last elections in 2018. With neither being able to make a breakthrough, King Sultan Abdullah Sultan Ahmad Shah, Meds Anwar and Nurdin as well as newly elected members of parliament to canvass their views on who should lead the new government. After a meeting of the royal household today, the king announced that Anwar will become prime minister because he had the support of a majority of Malaysia's 222 members of parliament. And our Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged the United Nations Security Council to act against Russia over air attacks on civilian infrastructure that again plunged Ukrainian cities into darkness and cold as winter sets in. Russia unleashed a missile barrage across Ukraine on Wednesday, killing 10 people, forcing shutdowns of nuclear power plants and cutting water and electricity supply in many places. Zelensky said his country has received 70 missiles, saying it is the Russian formula of terror. He said the attack was all against the country's energy infrastructure, hospitals, schools, transport, residential districts. He added that Ukraine was waiting to see a very firm reaction to Wednesday's airstrikes from the world, according to him. And now to sports. Brazil, Portugal and Uruguay are set to open fixtures today at 8 p.m. Meanwhile, England's captain Kane will be fit to face USA on Friday. Switzerland and Cameroon first game is ongoing. On Wednesday, Japan came from a goal down to beat Germany 2-1. Also in Group E, Spain thrashed Costa Rica by 7 goals. Morocco and Croatia played a goalless draw in Group F. And now to end global news, a recap of our top stories. We told you in the news that Somalia has launched a new TV channel named Dawja to counter Al-Shabaab's propaganda. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has held a meeting with Morocco's King Mohammed VI on where they discussed the disputed Western Sahara region. And finally, we told you that opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim has been named Malaysia's new prime minister, marking an incredible comeback for a man who was first lined up for the job in the mid-years of 1990s before he was suddenly sacked and jailed. And that's Global News. It was edited by Sunday Ajiboye. I am Olabisi, Olaniyi, Oluwasegun. Thank you for listening. Good afternoon.